Dare to enter Crow's Quill's books, where tales of forgotten realms and fearless souls come alive. Today's journey, Operation DarkStar, Chapter 3 to Chapter 6, by Mark Lindsay. Will you uncover the truth hidden in the shadows? Chapter 3. Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. Wake up, a timid voice urged. Whoa. Jared groaned sleepily. His mind was at the halfway point between slumber and reality. The voice once again urged him awake. It was several long seconds before he realized who it belonged to. What's the matter, sweetheart? Jared muttered. An experienced father, he knew all too well about the midnight requests for water or needing to go to the toilet at 3 a.m. There's a monster outside, the young voice said. Jared sighed. Well, we won't let it in then, Jared said, his eyes still closed. Daddy? I'm scared, the voice insisted, clearly fearful. Jared sighed again and opened his eyes. His 6-year-old daughter Taylor was standing by his bed. She was wearing a dressing gown and bunny slippers, a soft tiger toy with oversized eyes clutched tight to her chest. You know there's no such thing as monsters, Jared said. There is. I swear, Taylor insisted. Can I come sleep with you? Jared sighed again and looked across the bed at the figure of his wife under the covers. She was either really asleep or playing possum. Either way, he wasn't getting any help from her tonight. We've talked about this. You're getting too old to sleep in our bed, Jared said with a yawn. Daddy, I'm really scared, Taylor urged. Even with Tony, Jared asked, pointing to the toy tiger in her arms. The young girl nodded, another sigh. Okay, but before you crawl into bed with us, we're going to have a little walk. Back to your bedroom, I'll prove that there's no such thing as monsters. Okay, Jared said. The girl nodded, although she didn't look happy about it. Okay, Taylor replied. To anyone that could see them now, the sight would have been comical. Taylor was a typical 6-year-old girl, tiny and petite. Jared, on the other hand, was a giant. Well over 6'5", and as his employees joked, an axe handle across the shoulders. Jared was walking his daughter down the large hall. They passed plaques, pictures, and awards hanging on the wall. Various organizations proclaimed him Man of the Year. Business awards and pictures with prominent senators and celebrities. So much had changed in the past 10 years, but at heart, he still felt like the fireman he had been so many years ago. A simple invention he had come up with to assist emergency service personnel had changed all that, though. Now it was used all over the world. The invention had made him a millionaire overnight, starting his own business, which in turn created more innovation for police, firefighters, and paramedics. They passed a mounted axe on the wall, its chrome head gleaming in the light of the hallway. The names of his former co-workers engraved into the thick hickory handle, a touching message of farewell on the blade. It had been specially made for Jared, twice the size of a regular axe due to his large frame. As they passed it, he touched the handle, a sign of respect for the 3 names on the handle no longer alive. It was an unconscious act that he did every time he passed. The house was a mansion. Jared still felt uncomfortable living in it, but would never begrudge the best for his family. They entered Taylor's room, which was huge. Her bed was like a fairy tale castle, and the surrounding shelves were covered in books and toys. At the far end of the room, a massive window that went from the floor to the ceiling. The curtain was open slightly in the center. Come on, let's have a look. You'll feel really silly when you see that there's nothing there, Jared said. Peering out, the first thing the big man was aware of was the lack of moon, something he had been well aware of when he had tucked Taylor into bed earlier in the night. The second thing he sensed was his daughter taking in a shocked breath, and the third were the dozen figures gathered in his front yard, below the window. He immediately thought that it was Halloween, the figures dressed like demons and beasts. "What the hell?" Jared whispered, taking a closer look through the window. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. The exterior sensor light was triggered immediately outside, throwing away the surrounding dark. The light illuminated the figures and revealed them as creatures, a sight straight out of Dante's Inferno. "Jesus!" Jared yelled in surprise, jumping back and with him Taylor, knocking over a timber rocking horse. The noise was loud and abrupt. There was a booming crash downstairs and howls of the incoming creatures. Jared took a second, as his mind reeled with what was transpiring. "Paula," Jared said through gritted teeth. Snatching up his daughter, Jared fled, running towards his bedroom, stopping only to snatch the axe with the chrome blade along the way. Chapter 4. Sarah French finished wiping down the emergency medical stretcher and loaded it back into the ambulance. It was only 5 hours into her shift, and she was feeling tired, although to give herself credit, it had been a terribly busy night so far. 1 heart attack, 2 car accidents, and a small child with a high fever. Varied and problematic, it was the thing she loved most about the job, and despite the stress, it wasn't anywhere near as difficult as her last employment. "Hey, Jarhead," a voice called out. It belonged to Zero Hollier, her senior and mentor. The man was in his mid-50s, a small beer belly, bow legs, and an iron-gray handlebar mustache. He grinned broadly as he tossed Sarah a diet soda. She caught it easily in one hand. "Thanks, Zero," she replied, cracking the tab and quickly sucking up the heady foam that spilled out. "Damn, your reflexes are highly tuned," Zero whistled in admiration. "It's all in the wrist," Sarah replied with a wink. They both took a seat on the foot run of the ambulance and enjoyed the moment's respite. "That was good work earlier. On the first car accident, I mean," Zero said, taking a long swallow of root beer. "Thank you. It was pretty gruesome, though," Sarah said with a frown. "Nothing you haven't seen before, I'm betting," Zero said casually. However, he was gauging her reaction carefully. Running one hand through her short red hair, she nodded, but didn't reply. 26 months earlier, Sarah had been stationed in Afghanistan, a combat medic with a forward-deployed Marine company. She had volunteered, despite misgivings from her superiors. They had released her into the field because she was the best they had. The Leathernecks had given Sarah a tough time during the first week out, but eventually her hard work, dedication, and compassion won over even the toughest of gunnery sergeants. The Marines were located in a fortified area south of Marja, conducting vehicular patrols in and around the local villages in the hope they could get a lead on Taliban forces. Intel had been leaked, and reports of tortured civilians had made it back to the OC Bravo Company. Sending out a third of his force, they had been hit 2 miles out from their destination. An IED on the road had taken out the lead vehicle, and flanking RPGs had disabled the last 2 troop carriers. Casualties had been many and horrific. Her vehicle upturned, Sarah had scrambled, her vision obscured by dust and debris. The Marine medic felt around, finding first her rifle, the second her medical kit bag. Crawling out of the window of the upturned vehicle, Sarah had expecting the worst. She was still shocked by what greeted her outside. The remaining Marines were firing in all directions, having formed a tight ring around what was left of their convoy. Wiping the grit from her eyes, Sarah crawled towards a figure several meters away. The young corporal had been shredded with shrapnel, his uniform soaked in blood. So much so that Sarah believed him to be already dead. However, she had been shocked to discover a weak pulse and breathing. Seeing the corporal's ruined leg, she started applying a tourniquet. This is when she began taking fire. Rounds whizzed past, kicking up the desert floor. Shit, 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 Sarah cursed. The medic looked around frantically, searching for cover. She could see the bonnet of a Humvee. Gritting her teeth, she grasped the corporal by his vest and dragged him towards it. A sharp, intense, burning sensation tore through Sarah's right shoulder. "Ah!" she cried out, falling to her side. The medic could feel a warm, sticky sensation running down the inside of her shirt. Ignoring the pain in her shoulder, she slowly dragged the young corporal to cover, and before she could apply pressure to his wounds, she blacked out. 3 Mike 66. A voice over the radio broke the silence. "This is 3 Mike 66. What have you got for us, dispatch?" Zero asked. "We have a code Delta 1, dispatch said firmly. Zero's jaw stiffened as he started the engine and engaged the siren. "Dispatch, this is 3 Mike 66. We copy, now en route. Can you give us more detail?" Sarah asked. She was now checking the dash display to see the address. "It's on the corner of Botten Street and Carpenter Road, opposite the Keith Center," Sarah instructed. "We've been getting a lot of calls from this location, and none of them are making any sense. All I can tell you is there are multiple casualties with police already in location," dispatch warned. Sarah hung up the radio handset. "I've got a bad feeling about this," Zero muttered. Droplets of rain started to hit the front windshield. "You always say that," Sarah said with a forced smile. But truth be told, she was thinking the same thing. By the time they arrived at their destination, it was raining heavily. Their window wipers barely able to keep up with the job. They could see the red shine of many sirens through the slicked window. But more importantly, the screams of many voices. They were terrified. An icy chill shot down Sarah's spine. Zero's warm hand found her shoulder, the same as the one that had been wounded many months earlier. Sarah suppressed a flinch. "Stay cool, girl. I'll be with you every step." "We're a team," Zero said in a calm voice. His words had the right effect. She took a deep breath and steeled herself to the coming task. Zero saw this. "Good. You get the bags from the back, and I'll liaise with the police," Zero added, opening his door and stepping outside. He never finished his sentence. Something the size of a food vending machine struck Sarah's partner, taking both him and the ambulance door right off its hinges. 1 minute he was there, the next he wasn't. Stunned, Sarah just sat there staring at the now empty driver's seat and torn hole where the door had been, rain now pouring in. The sound of screaming started. It was the sound of intense, excruciating pain, more than any person could bear. Sarah also knew it was Zero. Chapter 5. The young man sat up with a start and looked around groggily. An alarm was shrieking loudly from outside. "What's that?" a voice beside him said. Jordan looked at the naked figure to his left, a young woman he had met only hours earlier. Despite her voluptuous form, his mind was elsewhere. "It's the police," Jordan replied, slipping on his jeans and black leather vest that held the symbol of a crazed warrior in the center, the 1% symbol to the left, and the MC letters to the right. On his left breast SGT at ARMS, and below that APACHE. He reached for the pistol on his nightstand, ripping the slide back in one movement and arming the gun. The interior of the Berserkers Motorcycle Club was complete chaos. Dozens of leather-clad bikers were preparing for war, loading weapons and fortifying their position. "Where are they?" Jordan asked, his expression grim. A giant of a man known only as Raptor turned to him, a shaved head with a tattoo of an eagle on the back of his scalp. "Who?" Raptor asked, annoyed at the interruption. "The fucking police," Jordan asked. Raptor snarled. "Will someone turn that fucking noise off?" Raptor growled. Several seconds later, the piercing alarm was silenced. Taking a deep breath, Raptor grabbed Jordan by the arm and steered him towards a large, flat-screen TV. It was broken up into a dozen separate images. Each one showed various locations around the clubhouse. Each image was different, but the same. Creatures, demons, beasts were attempting to beat their way inside. Jordan frowned. "Is this some kind of joke because I'm not amused?" Jordan said as he turned to leave. A firm hand stopped him. "This isn't a joke," Raptor growled. Something large was thrown at Jordan's feet. It took him several long, drawn-out seconds to work out what exactly he was looking at. It was close to 7 feet in length, with the same number of limbs as a man. That's where the similarities ended. Skin like a black olive, elongated hands and feet that looked like talons, the head bald with pointed ears and a face from a nightmare. It was riddled with bullet holes. Poking at it with his steel-capped boot, Jordan stared at Raptor. "This ain't funny, shithead," Jordan muttered. "It's not meant to be Apache," Raptor replied. "When?" Jordan asked. "A few minutes ago. It's not just us," Raptor said, and clicked the remote in his hand. The CCTV camera screen flickered off, and CNN appeared. The reporter was frantic. Images in the background showed creatures much like the one at Jordan's feet attacking military installations, tearing their way into major cities around the world. Fire, explosions, slaughter on a mass scale. The world, it seemed, was going to hell. "My God," Jordan whispered. "Apparently not." Raptor was quick to interject. "Nowhere is safe. Not even us." Jordan ignored the comment. Instead, he studied the screen. The reporter was calling on his viewers to get down on their knees and pray. The end of days was upon them. The sergeant-at-arms ran a hand through his thick black beard, a habit he had when anxious, but also one when he had made a decision. "Well, if we're going to go down, let's do it in style," Jordan growled. Raptor grinned, a sight not seen by many. "What do you need?" Raptor asked. 10 ass kickers and full access to the armory," Jordan replied. Done. Minutes later, Jordan was climbing the stairs out of the club's basement, which also doubled as the Berserker's armory. With him, a dozen large and intimidating men. All were armed with automatic assault rifles and pipe bombs. Jordan punched in the access code to the door leading out. There was a hiss of escaping air as the seal of the door was broken, and the moment Jordan stepped onto the top landing, they realized that they were too late. A demon horde had broken into the building. There were too many to count. Everywhere he looked, berserkers were battling for their lives. He wasn't the only one stunned. The men he had returned with couldn't believe their eyes. Jordan roared in defiance. He brought the assault rifle into his shoulder and squeezed the trigger. His shots were quick and concise. Creatures and demon beasts were obliterated under his onslaught. The men under his command quickly followed suit, firing desperately into the hellspawn. Moving together as a group, shoulder to shoulder, they smashed a path through the invading army. Only for every creature they killed, 5 more would take its place. "Motherfuckers," a voice yelled over the chaotic noise in the clubhouse. Jordan turned in its direction. It was Raptor. He was standing on the heavy timber bar. In one hand, he held a large Bowie knife. He was swinging and thrusting it at every monstrous head that came close to him. At his feet, a pile of black-skinned demons However, fatigue and numbers were clearly against him. Raptor. Look out, Jordan cautioned. However, his warning was never heard. Several creatures managed to slither past his defenses, one hitting the large man high, the other low. What they did next to Raptor was inhuman. They gutted the president of the berserkers with their taloned claws, his intestines hitting the floor seconds before he did. Apache fired several bursts into the creatures. They were ripped apart by the fire, black blood like tar splattering the wall behind them. As prepared as they were, it only took the berserkers a few minutes to lose. Apache realized that. The sergeant-at-arms led them fighting into a storage area. They were barely able to secure the door. Jordan wasted no time, weighing his options. He had already made up his mind the moment they had entered the room. He knew the way out was at the far-end door. "On me. We're leaving," Jordan ordered. "Like hell we are," one of the men spat. A tall, lean man with fists like Christmas hams and a jaw like an old Pontiac. He was a proven enforcer and went by the moniker of Tombstone. Plus, he had never liked Jordan. "This is over," Jordan stood his ground. "Coward," Tombstone growled. Jordan took a step towards the taller man. A hand on his shoulder stopped him. "This is not the place," the voice warned. It belonged to Jordan's right hand, Bruce Deed, a.k.a. Bam Bam. "This is exactly the place," Tombstone challenged. He was not alone. Nearly half the armed men were now siding with the taller man. "On any given day, I'd knock your teeth out." "Who am I kidding? This is any other given day." Jordan sneered, stepping forward so quickly that Tombstone had no idea what was coming until it was too late. The punch connecting under the taller man's jaw. Tombstone dropped to his knees. Angered, the others advanced on Jordan, only to be stopped by Bam Bam, who shot the closest man point blank in the head. "The next movement sees me go fully automatic," Bam Bam warned. He had a nasty reputation for losing his temper and for speaking honestly, traits that made the others pause. "Now that I have your attention, two choices: stay and die, or follow me and live," Jordan offered. None of Tombstone's men moved. Their pissed-off faces said it all. "Fine. Play out the Alamo fantasy. We're survivors." Jordan indicated himself, Bam Bam, and a much older man with a missing eye, a veteran of the First Gulf War, who spoke little and went by the name Popeye. Tombstone had recovered. He was now eyeing Jordan with murderous intent. He was also well aware that Bam Bam had his muzzle trained on him. "Don't let me ever see you again," Tombstone warned. Jordan checked his watch. "I'm betting that won't be long," Jordan replied. In his mind, this conversation was already over. He would waste no more time on them. They backed out of the room slowly and into an emergency tunnel that lay beyond the far door. Minutes after, they could hear inhuman roars, followed by gunfire and men screaming. Jordan felt little satisfaction in being right. For all he knew, they might not be far behind. "What are you thinking?" Bam Bam asked. "I'm thinking that a small group has a greater chance of getting out of this alive." "What do you think, Popeye?" Jordan asked. The older man grunted. "My thoughts exactly," Jordan replied, and they all chuckled lightly. It would be the last time for quite a while. Chapter 6. Mary Lawrence and her 6-year-old daughter Paige were huddled on the floor of the train. Having left the airport less than an hour ago, and 10 miles out from their stop, the power on the train had simply just gone out. There were 2 other people on the carriage with them: an old woman who was hugging a bag nearly as large as herself, and an African-American man in his 20s who looked as if he had just finished training at the gym. It wasn't the blackout that had the mother and child huddled. Rather, the almost deafening booming sound coming from the end of the tunnel, and the fact that each time it sounded, the earth shook so hard the carriage rattled on the tracks. It was clearly getting closer. "Mommy, I'm scared," Paige whispered. Mary wanted to tell her daughter that everything was going to be all right, but in her gut, she knew they were far from all right. Ever the pragmatist, she attempted to explain their situation without causing too much alarm. "You know, when we watched Lord of the Rings, and Frodo and Sam are thrust into a situation that seems entirely beyond their abilities, but there is nothing they can do. But they pull up their socks and do it?" Mary explained. "Hobbits don't wear socks," Paige giggled, and Mary smiled in response. No, they don't. But you understand my meaning?" Mary replied. "We're in a bad situation, but we're not going to moan and complain about it," Paige said in a moment of serious maturity. "That's right," Mary said proudly. "What's your plan?" a voice in the darkness asked. Mary jerked in surprise. It was the African-American man. At some point in their discussion, he had crawled from his seat towards the comfort of other people. Misery does indeed enjoy company. "I didn't mean to scare you. I don't think you realize how much your voices carry in the darkness. My name is Martin. Martin Bloom. I think you're right about our situation, not the Sam and Frodo thing," Martin said candidly. "Really?" Mary replied, surprised. "I think we're more like Merry and Pippin. They were really more thrust into a situation they couldn't comprehend," Martin explained. "You're more like Boromir. The group were kind of forced to take him," Paige offered. Martin chuckled, despite their current circumstance. The train was struck again by the loud, powerful movement of the ground. "I have to know what that noise is," Martin said, climbing to his feet. "What are you going to do?" Mary asked, suddenly fearful of what he might find. Martin strode over to the carriage doors and tugged hard on the handle. After several seconds, the door popped open. Both Martin and Mary peered out into the darkness of the tunnel. "I want to look too, Mommy," Paige insisted. "Shh," Mary replied, her eyes searching the dark, and then they both saw something in the distance. Giant, soulless eyes stared back, like some great nocturnal beast. They rose and fell, and with it, the earth crashed. Behind the eyes that could just make out its immense size. "Oh God, it's huge," Martin whispered in awe. "We have to go," Mary said in alarm. Grabbing Paige by the arm, she prepared to exit the carriage. "Where are you going to go?" Martin asked. "I don't know, but I'm not going to wait around here to see what it wants," Mary replied. Martin nodded. They all prepared to leave when Paige stopped them. "What is it, sweetheart?" Mary asked. "What about the lady over there?" Paige asked, pointing to the old lady at the far end of the carriage. "She's right. We can't leave her here," Mary agreed. "Ma'am, you need to come with us. It's not safe here," Martin called out. The old woman ignored the offer. Martin repeated his request. The woman remained silent, and just when it seemed that she would not answer, she turned and started to sing a simple nursery rhyme. "Half a pound of tuppenny rice, half a pound of treacle. That's the way the money goes, Pop. Goes the weasel. Up and down the city road. In and out the eagle. That's the way the money goes, Pop. Goes the weasel," the old woman sang over and over. Mary stared at the old woman and realized that she was stark raving mad, and that leaving her behind was as good as condemning her to die. But she also had her daughter to worry about. "We don't have any time left. We need to go now," Mary insisted. Grabbing her daughter by the arm, she climbed down from the carriage with Martin directly behind her. Shielding her daughter from the sight of the approaching beast, they fled in the other direction. the sound of the old woman singing becoming fainter with each step they took. That seals today's tale in shadows. We hope Operation DarkStar has drawn you deeper into its enigma. Return soon to Crow's Quill's books, where the next chapter awaits, whispering secrets yet untold.